The circulation through the fetus during the uterine life differs from that of a child or an adult. In the extrauterine world, oxygenation occurs in the lungs, and oxygenated blood returns via the pulmonary veins to the left side of the heart to be ejected by the left ventricle into systemic circulation. In contrast, fetal circulation oxygenation occurs in the placenta, and the fetal lungs are non-functional as far as the transfer of oxygen and carbon dioxide is concerned. Oxygenated blood travels from the placenta to the fetus's systemic circulation through a series of shunts. Fetal circulation involves the circulation of blood from the placenta to and through the fetus and then back to the placenta. A properly functioning fetal circulatory system is essential to sustain the fetus. Before it develops, nutrients and oxygen diffuse through the extraembryonic colon and the yolk sac from the placenta. As the embryo grows, its nutrient needs increase. Thus, the circulation must develop quickly and accurately. 3 shunts are present during fetal life: the ductus venosus, the ductus arteriosus, and the foramen ovale. The ductus venosus connects the umbilical vein to the inferior vena cava. The ductus arteriosus connects the main pulmonary artery to the aorta. The foramen ovale is the anatomical opening between the right and left atrium. The blood with the highest oxygen content is delivered to the fetal heart, neck, head, and upper limbs, while the blood with the lowest oxygen content is shunted towards the placenta. The oxygenated blood is carried from the placenta to the fetus via the umbilical vein. About half of this blood passes through the hepatic capillaries, and the rest flows through the ductus venosus into the inferior vena cava. Blood from the vena cava is mostly deflected from the foramen ovale into the left atrium, then to the left ventricle, into the ascending aorta, and then on to the head and upper body. This allows the fetal coronary circulation and brain to receive the blood with the highest level of oxygen. Deoxygenated blood from the superior vena cava flows into the right atrium, the right ventricle, and then the pulmonary artery. Because of high pulmonary vascular resistance, only a small percentage, about 5 to 10% of the blood in the pulmonary arteries flows to the lungs. The majority is shunted through the patent ductus arteriosus and then to the descending aorta. The fetal lungs are essentially non-functional because they are filled with fluid, making them resistant to incoming blood flow. They only receive enough blood for proper nourishment. Finally, 2 umbilical arteries carry the unoxygenated blood from the descending aorta back to the placenta. At birth, a dramatic change in the fetal circulatory patterns occurs. The foramen ovale, ductus arteriosus, ductus venosus, and umbilical vessels are no longer needed. With the newborn's first breath, the lungs inflate, which leads to an increase in blood flow to the lungs from the right ventricle. This increase raises the pressure in the left atrium, causing a one-way flap on the left side of the foramen ovale called the septum primum to press against the opening, creating a functional separation between the 2 atria. Blood flow to the lungs increases because blood entering the right atrium can no longer bypass the right ventricle. As a result, the right ventricle pumps blood into the pulmonary artery and onto the lungs. Typically, the foramen ovale is functionally closed within 1 to 2 hours after birth. It is physiologically closed by 1 month by deposits of fibrin that seal the shunt. Permanent closure occurs by the 6th month of life. The ductus venosus, which links the inferior vena cava with the umbilical vein, usually closes with the clamping of the umbilical cord and inhibition of blood flow through the umbilical vein. This fetal structure closes by the end of the first week. The ductus arteriosus constricts partly in response to the higher arterial oxygen levels that occur after the first few breaths. This closure prevents blood from the aorta from entering the pulmonary artery.